it's a weird thought how this philo came to me, because we're going to talk about one of the stories I mentioned earlier this week. So you guys remember the story of Samuel? Remember the philo I gave you the other day about growing into it? You remember that? So come on. You got to grow into it. We talked about Samuel. He grew up in the church. His mom really wanted him. Grew up in the church. And then what happened? You know, he grew up around the priests. And then he heard from God. One of the keys of that thing, it said, you know, visions were rare at this time. So it was saying, okay, good, you remember it. So this is what happened. Like, you know, yesterday I couldn't, my throat was clapped. I was doing my Bible thing. I was praying even the day before that. But I listened to TD Jakes again. And I listened to a random one, and it was weird for me because the same story came up. And I listened to it, like, it was weird that it came up again. He started reading out of Samuel, and he was explaining this story. And I really stopped right there, because when I started hearing this story again from another pastor, after we just read it and talked about it, there was a key with that story that came up, and it was what happened with Samuel. So what happened with Samuel is, it said visions were rare at that time. And when he was like of a certain age, he's already been serving in the church. He was sleeping, and then the Lord called to him, and then he got up. He went to Eli and said, yo, did you call me? And Eli said, no, I didn't call you. Go back to bed. So then Samuel goes back to bed, and then he hears the Lord call him again. And at this point, it says it in the Bible, it says he didn't know God at this point. He grew up serving in the church. He grew up in there the whole time, but he didn't know God. He didn't even know what God sounded like. He thought it was this old man, Eli. So then what happened, the third time the Lord called him again, and he went to Eli, and then Eli said, listen, I perceive that it's the Lord now. So he said, go back into your bed and listen. I didn't tell this one. I'm telling you, I'm recapping it for you exactly. Somebody like, no, Josh, you talked about this. I know this is the philo. Because when I was listening to that again, I was like, damn, is there something I could get back from that story? I said, maybe the fact that I'm hearing it again for the second time in the week and after this, and it sounds so familiar, I said, maybe I need to go back and say, hey, speak, for your servant is listening. We talked about that, but maybe I need to go back again. I was like, yo, what am I missing? Because this is the second time I've approached this text, probably the third time I've approached this text for you guys. So I said, it's interesting, and I thought about it. Because what happened? What happened yesterday? I didn't even give you a philo. Think about that. I couldn't even speak. So this is the question in what I want to talk about today, and what I'm giving you right now. Because what happened? Maybe there won't be a philo. Honestly, God forbid. What if I'm not able to give you a philo every day? Or something happens to me, or wherever you get your stuff, something happens. Things happen. I'm not God. I'm not your pastor. Think about it. This is saying, and this is what I realized too with a lot of things, and even when I go back and listen, and this is what I'm telling you today, especially for this weekend. I encourage you. This is what this is how I enjoy my weekend. And for some of you, you better listen to this, and some of you is going to miss it. But you need to find your personal encounter with God. That's what it is. That's what happened with Samuel. You know, how do I give you the philos? How it's funny how little things in my life, even when I lost my voice the other day, I was like, God, that's crazy. It was weird. I couldn't even talk, even if I wanted to. It's weird. But then I say, we could approach this. I could tell you to grow into it. I could tell you to do this. We've looked at this, but at the end of the day, that story was about a few things and how it presented itself. But it really was Samuel before Samuel did anything great. Honestly, when I look at my life and I see, wow, before I started to do a lot of things, and even the cult was built on a foundation of God, whether you like that or not. Like, why the hell would I provide stuff for people and try to give back and give back and give back and genuinely try to help? That's God. So I think for a lot of you here, you're coming into something, but I think you really need your personal encounter with God. And I'm not talking, the personal encounter with God isn't listening, thinking I'm calling your name through the fucking speakers. It's not the philo. It's really, really not. It's going to be for you guys to maybe take a step back and have you ask God, hey, what are you saying? I know I've asked you that on that 2 weeks ago. I remember I said that, but I think this is the third time for me to remind you, you will all need your personal encounter with God. And sometimes now, do you realize the point I'm saying this? Because some of you have never known God, and that's fine. And God bless you. I'm honored that some of you have had certain encounters, but you have not fully encountered God, but you've been exposed to it. You've been exposed to these stories, all of this. But you know what I'm really worried about? You don't know who I'm really worried about? The people who are like Samuel. They grew up in church. All they've done, some of you, your whole life, you've known the Bible. You've known God. You've known this. You've known that. But have you really had an encounter with God? Oh, y'all don't feel me. Honestly, some people who have never heard about God, the burden is not on them as much, for they don't know. But some of you, how many of you are actually Samuel? Think about that. You know all of this stuff, but have you had that personal encounter with God? Do you love people? That's what we talked about. Do you have the peace? Like, why are you getting angry? Why are you attacking and condemning your brother? Because it's very possible, as that story shows you, you could spend your whole life growing up in church and still not ever know God. Oh, y'all don't feel me. This is why rules and regulations and reading, if you're going to follow this, follow that. Yeah, that's awesome. And you can follow all the rules, but you don't really know God. And that's what it's talking about. So that's what I'm asking some of you with this philo. It's a mini one. Go have that encounter with God. Go back and listen and say, hey, I tell God, this is what I say. I say, Lord, speak, for your servant is listening. And honestly, I say this today, and I say this for a lot of you in your I don't know who I'm talking to, really, but I know different people in different parts and different points. Changes are going to happen. A lot of you are shifting and taking it to the next level. And you know what happens? When one thing goes up, another thing comes down. Some of you, do you realize he spent his whole life in that church? And before he encountered God, he didn't encounter God until God called him to say, Samuel, now's your time. Now's your time to do this. It's your time to call them out. It's your time to do this. It's time to do that. There's good and bad. And that's the next point, honestly. There's up and down. Like, you realize Eli was old. The pastor that raised him, the priest in the church, was old and decaying. And that's what he called him to do. He said, Samuel, when God finally talked to Samuel, he said, what you need to do is tell Eli that his sons are going to die, and that he is going to die, and that this is going to happen now in a new era. A new generation is coming in of God. That's what he told Sam. Imagine how crazy that is. You grow up in church 12 years, and then the first time you have God, he's telling you to tell the guy who taught you everything, all this bad stuff is going to happen. And even Eli said, well, that's fine. He said, for God knows. We had a philo on that. But do you realize what it's telling you? Some of you aren't going to like this. In its own way, it's telling you to respect authority. Realistically. It's being respectful of this fact. Like, do you realize Samuel grew up and watched this old man let a lot of this shit slide? The whole time he's like, he could have been like, your sons are evil. Your sons are doing this. How could it be? How he could have complained? He could have got up in it. But he simply respected the fact that, damn, Okay, well, it's time for Eli to come down. It's time for Eli and that generation to end. So even while there was wickedness and evilness, he knew it was in God's hands to a degree. He didn't take it upon himself to fight and to, it's like Samuel understood, or maybe God understands, there's timing. There's timing on everything. There is going to be an end of a generation. There is going to be a new generation. And that's really what you saw there. But it wasn't this, there's an order and process. And that's part of even understanding God. Honestly, God is all about order and process. I know a lot of people don't believe it. People think it's about following rules. No, it's just order. That's why God is a respecter of principle, not people. It's the principle that even if there is bad and evil, it all has its own expiration date. That's what it is. It's not your job to get mad and fight against other people. That if just because the expiration date's not what you like, how come they get to do that? How come he gets to do that? It should be like this. You're not God. God knows though. But God is about order. It's not about following laws. And some people here, I'll tell you now, are you respecting order? Not even authority. I'm talking order. That's stability. Do you have an order of operations? Do you have order when it comes to making money? What's the order? Save 10%. Take 10%, put it here. You wait every month. That's order. It's principle. Oh, y'all don't feel me. Y'all really don't. You need to respect order to get God. And that's what all of this is. There was an order to all of Samuel's life. There was an order to how he heard God. There was an order to how he had to see evil and deal with it. And there was a time for evil, and there was a time for him to come in and stop it. But there was an order, because he couldn't have just been born and then started doing that. No, he had to learn. He had to learn from the guy. He had to learn from Eli, because without Eli, his mom would have never showed up in that church, and then he would have never been there. Don't forget that, because that's for some people. It's easy to talk shit now, but where did it come from? At one point, it wasn't always like this. That's what it teaches you. But he had to go through the order. He had to learn so that when it was called and it was his time, he was able to come in and say, okay, this is what's happening now. This is the shift. This is the change. So I think it's pretty exciting. A lot of changes are going to happen. A lot of you have really, really specific plans. And I hope you know. And if you want to take it to the next order, I mean, some of you should ask to listen to God. Think about order. And have you learned order? Have you respected order in your life to watch the plan unfold? I always say God's plan. I say, watch it unfold. I love it. You can't believe that if you don't respect order. You cannot believe that if you're always trying to take everything into your own hands. But ultimately, the whole point of this story, none of that would have happened if he did not have an encounter with God. So that's what I'm asking you today. That's what I challenge you guys for this weekend. I don't know if God's going to make you have an encounter. I mean, I can't control that. But the question I'm really asking is have you gone back to bed? Some of you have been awakened many different times, and you thought it was something else. And then you've gone up and down. But my question is, have you gone back, and are you waiting to hear? Have you asked for it? Are you looking for it? Have you said, speak, for I am listening? And my question is, are you listening? You know how listening works, right? It's a steps and orders and operations. You got to get there and listen. But that's what I'm saying. If you think listening comes after you start talking, that's not how the story unfolded. He was just sleeping. An idea woke him up, a noise. So I'm not telling you guys shut up. I'm not telling you to censor yourself. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, you know what you do when you're alone. You all have time. Are you sitting there and thinking, and have you really listened? Some of you are working on, and that's what I'm saying. For some people in here, you did something once. It wasn't God. You came back and did the same thing. It wasn't God, but this is what it literally, I think the third time, all you got to do is tweak something. Instead of going and waking up and going to Eli, some of you need to sit there and go to God and say, God, I'm listening. and watch what happens. Woo. So I'm excited. And I encourage all of you to really look in the mirror, especially if you grew up listening to words like these. You may know the Bible, but do you know God? You may know this, but do you know God? It's a scary question. If you don't think I ask myself that question, you're missing the point. Because that's what I feel like when I hear that story for the third or fourth time out of nowhere. I'm like, God, it gives me chills. Because I'm like, God, have I encountered God then? Then I get excited too, because I'm like, wow, there's a lot. I was like, wow, maybe I can learn a lot more. Maybe there is something. And it's staying in that place. It's not trying to go to somebody else. It's not going to Eli. It's not going there. It's making sure that instead of getting up, maybe all I got to do is listen. And we've talked about that earlier. It's simple as that. So it has nothing to do with being religious. Believe me. Again, there's a lot of people not religious in here. I love it. Because they're like, I'm not religious, but I listen to Philo. They're like, I don't go that way, but Josh is cute. No, it doesn't matter, dude. It really, really doesn't matter. This is a personal reflection. And whether you don't like the religious stuff, one thing you could take out of this is order and understanding the order. You see what I'm saying? And respecting the order for your next step in life. And that's where some of you guys are going to go. And I'm excited for it. I really, really am. But it's not going to be, getting mad at what you can't change. And I really, what I'm trying to say is that there's a time for everything. And when some of you realize that, you will see it. And then some people in here, you're not religious, but you have more, you're going to know God more than some people. And at the same time, the same people who grew up listening to this. For real, this is your moment. You guys love a lot of things, but do you really love God? Show that you love God through how you love people. Have you encountered God? God is not a book. God is not a manual. It is not step by step. That's why the same people say, I'm not religious. It's because they have been told that that's what a relationship with God is, and that's not true. Why do you think I say what I say and I feel how I feel? And I'm not saying I'm always correct, but I live in my relationship, in my experience I've had with God. That's why people say, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. You go read the book, but it's not just about the book. What's your experience with God? It's not like an experience you get. It's not a resume. It's not. It's not a rule book. It's not a degree. It's not qualifications. That's why I say some of you, God bless you, you have God in you. I can see it. Some of you say you have God, and I can see that you just say it. So that's what I'm saying for everybody. Just reflect right now. Maybe I'm just saying get to know yourself for real. But have you taken the time to go back and listen? And are you fighting order when you really should see your time is coming? A good time. But it takes time to get to somewhere. Something is preparing you. But if you're not listening, you're going to miss that. So I'm excited for those who do listen. And maybe some of you, this is the second time you're hearing this. Go back and listen again. That's what I got at. That's where this philo came from. Because I did not want to talk about this. But I couldn't shake that thought. I was like, why does this story keep coming up? And one of the key parts of the story is repeating the same thing and then going back. Isn't that trippy? And doesn't that sound like stocks? Doesn't that sound like our journey with money? Where a lot of us are repeating the same thing, but all we got to do is go back and do it again. But then some of us have gotten massive success by repeating the same thing, going back one more time and just tweaking it. Come on, man. So that's what I'm saying. And that's why I was like, all right, I can't shake this. And then I couldn't shake the thought that he did grow up in, like, how do you not know God when you were born into it? And that just shows a lot. So I think it's exciting for everybody. wherever you lie on the spectrum. But I encourage you to look. All right? I encourage you to look, or maybe just listen and be at peace with it. And that's why I want you guys at peace, to let it come to you. So it got me excited. I hope you're excited as well. And now I hope you're ready to play some prices right. And I hope you take that philo to the bank, baby. That is your philosophy. Make sure you guys are subscribed. We're live Monday through Friday, 30 minutes before opening. Drop your thumbs up on the video. You're on mobile. Press high chat. X out the chat. Hit the thumbs up button. Second link for the Nightly Watch This in main channel. First link for the Scream Alerts Bootcamp and Real Estate course. Follow me on Instagram at The Trading Fraternity. Keep it positive and respectful. There it is, baby. It's Price is Right time. It's Price is Right time. Look, baby. Look and listen. Look and listen, baby. Woo!